Clara was born on a quiet winter morning, in a mansion that overlooked a large city filled with noise, movement, and life. Her parents, Richard and Elena, had been waiting for her birth for many years. Richard was a millionaire businessman who owned several companies, and Elena had dreamed for a long time of becoming a mother. When Clara finally arrived, they believed their life had become perfect. Nurses wrapped the small baby girl in a soft blanket and handed her to her mother, who cried with happiness, imagining all the moments she would spend singing lullabies, whispering stories, and hearing her daughter one day say the word "Mama." But that dream changed very soon. During the first few hours, the nurses noticed something unusual. Clara did not react to loud sounds. A metal tray fell on the floor, making everyone in the room jump, but Clara stayed calm, her face peaceful as if she had not heard anything at all. The nurse tested again by clapping close to Clara's ears, but the baby did not blink or move. The nurse shared her worry with the doctor, and a quiet tension grew inside the bright hospital room. Richard and Elena tried to stay positive. They laughed nervously, saying, "Maybe she is just a calm baby." But deep inside, Elena felt something cold growing in her chest. When the doctor returned with test results, his expression told them everything before he even spoke. Clara had been born completely deaf. Elena's hands began to shake, and Richard felt the ground beneath him feel unsteady. The doctor explained that Clara's condition had no easy cure. Some children improved with devices or surgeries, but in Clara's case, there was no guarantee. In fact, doctors believed she might never hear anything at all. Not her mother's voice, not music, not laughter, not even her own heartbeat. The news fell like a heavy stone on the new parents. Richard was a strong man in the business world, but this moment felt like a battle he was not prepared for. Elena cried quietly, holding her daughter close, feeling both love and fear mixed together in a way she had never experienced before. She wondered if Clara would ever learn to talk, communicate, or enjoy the world like other children. She imagined her daughter growing up in silence, unable to hear bedtime stories, rain falling, or the comforting words of her parents. When they returned home to the grand mansion, the atmosphere had changed. Everything felt too big, too quiet, and too empty. Expensive decorations and beautiful rooms no longer brought joy. Clara slept peacefully in her nursery, unaware of the worry surrounding her. Elena would stand beside the crib, speaking softly, hoping for even a tiny reaction, but Clara's eyes never followed sound, they only followed movement. Richard spent long nights searching for specialists, treatments, and research papers. He wanted to fight for a miracle. He was a man who believed that everything could be solved with money, effort, or intelligence. But this was the first time in his life that he felt completely powerless. The silence around Clara felt like a prison he didn't know how to break. Days turned into weeks, and the family tried to adjust. Elena learned small signs to communicate with Clara, like touching her gently to get her attention or using big expressions to help the baby understand emotions. She decorated the nursery with bright colors, believing that if Clara could not hear the world, she should at least see the beauty of it. But despite their efforts, a sadness remained. Elena often sat alone, thinking about all the moments she had dreamed of, singing lullabies, reading stories aloud, hearing Clara laugh at silly sounds. These dreams seemed far away now. Richard tried to comfort her, but he too felt lost. Even the mansion staff noticed the heavy atmosphere. They walked softly through the halls, not wanting to disturb the grieving parents. One person who watched everything quietly was the housemaid, Marena. She had been working with the family for years and she cared for them deeply. She saw the pain in Elena's eyes, the frustration in Richard's voice, and the quiet world surrounding Clara. But Marena also noticed something else, something the others could not see. Sometimes, when Marena stepped close, Clara's eyes seemed to follow her movement with unusual attention. The baby reacted more strongly to Marena's presence than to anyone else's. Marena did not say much at first, but she felt something inside her. An old memory, a hint of knowledge she carried from her childhood. While the family believed they were trapped in a hopeless situation, Marena sensed that Clara's silent beginning might not be the end. In fact, it might just be the start of something unusual, something the family could not yet imagine. But for now no one knew. The mansion remained filled with quiet sorrow, and Clara continued to live in her peaceful, silent world, unaware that her life was destined to change in a way no one could predict. Marena had worked in the Millionaire's mansion for almost 10 years, long before Clara was born. She was a quiet woman, gentle in her movements and soft in her speech, someone who never pushed herself into the family's personal matters. Most people barely noticed her presence, yet she noticed everything. Even when she walked through the busy hallways filled with workers, her steps were so light that she seemed like a calm shadow moving through the house. While the mansion had always been busy with guests, meetings, and celebrations, the air changed after Clara's diagnosis. Conversations became whispers. Smiles grew rare. Elena no longer hosted tea parties, and Richard stopped inviting business partners home. The only sound that remained constant was Marina's soft humming as she worked, though of course Clara could not hear it. One afternoon, when Clara was around 3 months old, Elena sat beside the window holding her daughter. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red from crying, but she forced a smile whenever Clara looked at her face. Marena entered quietly with warm tea. She placed the cup near Elena and stood still for a moment, unsure if she should speak. "You should drink something," Marena said gently. Elena nodded without looking up. She tried to be strong, but her hands trembled. When Marena stepped closer to take the empty bottles, she noticed Clara's small hand reaching toward her direction, though Marena hadn't made any sound. It was not the first time this had happened. Clara reacted to Marena's presence differently, more alert, more curious. Her eyes followed Marena's movements with surprising focus, even in dim light. Elena noticed this too, but she brushed it off as coincidence. She had stopped hoping for anything unusual, afraid of false expectations. But for Marena, these small signs stirred memories she had tried to bury years ago. Marena was born in a remote mountain village far away from the city. It was a place where people believed in natural energies, old traditions, and the connection between the body and the unseen world. Her grandmother had been a healer, someone villagers trusted more than doctors. She used herbs, vibrations, rhythmic tools, and strange wooden objects during her healing sessions. People traveled long distances to seek her help. When Marena was a child, she often watched her grandmother perform these rituals, though she never fully understood them. Before her grandmother died, she had given Marena a small wooden box. One day, she had said, "Someone will need what is inside. Do not open it until your heart tells you the right moment." Marena had kept the box hidden for years, locked away in her small room at the mansion. She never opened it, not even out of curiosity. She believed deeply in her grandmother's words. Now, watching Clara's unusual responses, a strange feeling grew inside her. It was quiet at first, like a whisper from a distant memory, but every day it became a little stronger, almost like her grandmother's voice was guiding her. One chilly evening, Marena passed by Clara's nursery and found Elena sleeping in the rocking chair. Clara lay awake in her crib, staring at the patterns of light on the ceiling. Marena stepped inside silently, planning to adjust the blankets. But as she approached, Clara turned her head sharply, her eyes following Marena's every move. The baby's expression was calm but strangely aware. Marena froze. This reaction was too precise to ignore. She knelt beside the crib, not touching Clara, just watching her. Slowly, she lifted her hand and moved it gently through the air. Clara's eyes tracked the movement perfectly. Marena then tapped lightly on the wooden rail, creating vibrations that only someone very sensitive could sense. Clara's fingers twitched and her body seemed to respond. A tiny shiver ran through Marena's spine. She remembered how her grandmother once healed a boy who could not speak until he felt vibrations through a wooden object that looked similar to the one inside Marena's box. The same feeling returned, this time strong enough to make her stand up quickly. She stepped back, breathing deeply, trying to calm her racing heart. She did not want to interfere with the family's medical decisions. She knew she was only a maid. But something deep inside her told her that Clara's silence was different. It was not emptiness, it was waiting for something that the doctors could not see. The next morning, Richard asked all staff members to gather in the hall. He announced that he was hiring a new specialist and that treatments would begin soon. Everyone clapped politely, but Marena felt a heaviness in her chest. She respected Richard, but she could not shake the feeling that Clara needed something else, something not found in hospitals. Later that night, after everyone went to sleep, Marena finally made a decision she had been avoiding for months. She went to her small room, kneeled beside her wooden chest, and pulled out the old, dust-covered box her grandmother had left her. Her hands shook as she held it. She ran her fingers over the carved designs on the lid, symbols she had seen many times in her childhood. She whispered, "Is this the moment you meant, grandmother?" The house was silent. Only Clara, sleeping upstairs in her silent world, seemed strangely connected to the moment without knowing why. Marena pressed her thumb gently on the center of the lid, and with a soft click, the box began to open. When the small wooden box finally opened, a gentle smell of old wood and herbs escaped into Marena's room. Inside, wrapped carefully in faded cloth, lay a strange object, a smooth, oval-shaped stone with delicate patterns carved on its surface. It was warm to the touch even after years of being hidden. Alongside the stone was a thin wooden stick with tiny holes, almost like a flute but without a place to blow air. Marena recognized them instantly. These were the objects her grandmother used in resonance rituals, healing sessions that relied not on sound but on vibrations felt deep in the body. Marena sat silently, staring at the items. Her grandmother had once told her, "Some people do not need sound to hear. Their bodies listen in other ways." Back then, Marena was too young to understand. Now, remembering Clara's reactions, those words suddenly made sense. But fear tugged at her heart. What if she made things worse? What if the family misunderstood? She knew Richard was practical and believed in modern solutions. Elena, though gentle, was fragile in her worry. Would they trust a strange method from a faraway village? Or would they think she was trying to interfere in something sacred? All night, Marena sat on the floor, unable to sleep. She turned the stone in her hands slowly, feeling the smooth surface, the carved lines, and the strange energy that seemed to hum quietly beneath her fingertips. Each moment strengthened her feeling. Clara needed this. The next morning, Marena moved through her chores with unusual focus, watching Clara closely. She noticed that Clara's eyes followed movement more than most babies her age. She seemed deeply connected to light, shadow, and touch. Even the smallest shift in the room's air made Clara's eyelashes flutter. The baby did not respond to sound, but she responded to the world in a different, almost magical way. Later that afternoon, Elena gently rocked Clara in her arms, trying to soothe her fussiness. The baby turned her head suddenly when Marena entered the room, a simple reaction that caught Elena's attention. "She reacts to you more than anyone," Elena said softly, her voice mixed with curiosity and worry. Marena paused, unsure how to respond. "Maybe she feels something when I walk. Some children are more sensitive to movement," she said, trying to keep her tone casual. Elena nodded slowly but looked thoughtful, like she was beginning to see something she hadn't noticed before. That night, after finishing her tasks, Marena stood silently outside Clara's nursery. The room was filled with a soft glow from a night lamp shaped like a moon. Elena was asleep again in the rocking chair, exhausted from worry. Clara lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling like she was seeing something invisible. With careful steps, Marena entered the room. She carried the stone hidden inside her apron pocket. She didn't plan to use it, not yet. She only wanted to observe Clara one more time before making a decision. Marena sat on the floor beside the crib. She didn't move or speak, but somehow Clara sensed her presence. The baby's eyes shifted slowly, settling on Marena's face. There was something knowing in that small gaze, something that made Marena's heart tighten. Very gently, Marena lifted her hand and held it close to the crib's wooden railing. She tapped the railing with her fingers, not creating sound but causing a soft vibration. Clara's tiny body responded immediately. Her hands twitched, and her head tilted in the direction of the vibration. Marena did it again, this time tapping in a slow, rhythmic pattern her grandmother once taught her. 15 years had passed since she'd last seen the ritual, yet the rhythm came back as if it lived inside her bones. Clara's eyes widened, her breathing changed, and her little fingers opened and closed in a pattern that matched the tapping. It was as if the baby was communicating in a language built from touch and movement. Marena felt warmth spreading through her chest. These were signs, clear signs, that Clara could feel what others could not. Suddenly, Elena stirred awake. Marena quickly pulled her hand back, her heart racing. She didn't want Elena to misunderstand. "Is everything all right?" Elena asked sleepily. "Yes," Marena replied softly. Clara was just looking around. Elena gently picked up her daughter and kissed her forehead. "I wish I knew how to help her," she whispered, her voice cracking. A strong wave of courage moved through Marena's body. She almost spoke, almost told Elena about the stone, the ritual, the feeling in her heart. But fear stopped her. What if they fired her? What if they accused her of strange practices? She knew she needed to wait for the right moment. The next few days only made her conviction stronger. During feeding, Clara reacted when Marena touched the table. During bath time, she turned her head when Marena entered the room even without footsteps. And when Richard clapped loudly during a sound test recommended by the doctor, Clara did not move at all. But when Marena lightly tapped the bath's edge, Clara's leg kicked softly. Richard blamed coincidence. Elena wasn't sure. But Marena knew the truth. Clara wasn't unreachable. She wasn't trapped in silence. She was listening, just not with her ears. One evening, as a storm rolled outside and thunder echoed through the city, Marena stood in her small room holding the wooden box once again. Rain hit the window in heavy drops and the wind howled, but Clara would not hear any of it. Marena imagined the baby lying in her crib, unaware of the world's loud chaos, yet deeply aware of every vibration around her. Marena closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "I have to try. Clara deserves a chance." And for the first time she knew exactly what she needed to do. That night the storm outside grew stronger. Lightning flashed across the sky, filling the mansion with quick bursts of white light. Thunder shook the windows, though Clara, sleeping softly in her crib, felt none of it. While everyone else was disturbed by the noise, the baby remained wrapped in her own quiet world, peaceful and untouched by the storm. But in Marena's small room there was no peace. She stood near the window, clutching the wooden box in both hands. Her heart thumped heavily, not from fear of the storm, but from the decision she knew she had to make. For weeks she had watched Clara respond to vibrations, movements, patterns of air, and the gentle tapping rhythms her grandmother had once used to help others. Every reaction Clara gave felt like a message, a silent plea for someone to understand her. Marena placed the box on her table and opened it again. The stone glowed softly under the dim lamp, its carved lines creating shadows that danced across the walls. She picked up the thin wooden stick and held it close to her ear, even though it made no sound. Her grandmother had called it a breath stick, not because one blew air into it, but because it carried the breath of vibrations, something the body could feel even if the ears couldn't. For a long moment she simply stood there, remembering her grandmother's lessons. She could see her clearly, a small, strong woman with gentle eyes who sat with the sick and broken, guiding them with unexplainable patience. Children who couldn't speak learned to hum. Adults with chronic pain found relief. People ignored by doctors found hope. Her grandmother had always said, "Healing is not about sound or words. It's about connection." Marena wiped a tear from her cheek. She felt the same connection growing between her and Clara. Down the hall, the mansion was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home early because of the storm. Elena and Richard were in their room, talking in hushed voices about new treatments in hospitals in other countries. Their worry filled the house like a heavy cloud. Marena stepped out of her room, the box hidden under her shawl. Each step made her heart beat louder, though the storm outside covered the sound. When she reached the nursery door, she paused. The soft light of the moon-shaped lamp illuminated the room. Clara lay awake, her large innocent eyes staring at the moving shadows created by the rain. Marena entered slowly and approached the crib. When she leaned over, Clara looked up at her with the same deep awareness that had drawn Marena's attention from the beginning. This time, instead of waiting nervously, Marena took a deep breath and allowed her instincts to guide her. She lifted the stone and held it gently above the crib. Even though the baby couldn't hear, her fingers twitched the moment the stone came near. A small shiver passed through Clara's body, like she was sensing something new. Marena then held the wooden stick in her other hand and tapped the stone softly. The sound was silent to the ears, but the vibration flowed through the air like a quiet ripple. Clara's eyes widened. Her breathing changed. Her tiny hands opened as if reaching toward the feeling. "Good girl," Marena whispered, though Clara couldn't hear the words. "You feel it, don't you?" She tapped again, this time in a soft, rhythmic pattern her grandmother once used for children with sensory imbalances. The rhythm wasn't musical in the normal sense, it was more like a heartbeat, steady and warm. Tap, pause, tap, pause, tap. Clara responded instantly. Her legs moved slightly. Her chest rose and fell faster, as if she were excited. Her eyes followed Marena's hand with remarkable focus. For the first time since her birth, Clara looked alive in a new way. Engaged, aware, connected. Marena fought back tears. She continued the rhythm, slowly moving the stone along the crib's edge. Clara reached toward it, her fingers brushing the wooden rail. "Can you feel it?" Marena whispered again, her voice full of awe. But then, suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Marena froze. The wooden stick slipped slightly from her hand. The stone glowed faintly under the crib lamp, making her actions impossible to hide if anyone walked in. The nursery door began to open. Marena quickly hid the stone under the blanket she had brought with her. She stood up straight, heart pounding, trying to appear calm. Elena walked in, still half asleep, her hair messy and her robe loosely tied. She looked confused at first, then surprised to see Marena awake. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Elena asked softly. Marena swallowed hard. "I heard the storm," she lied quietly. "I thought Clara might be frightened." Elena gave a tired smile. "She wouldn't hear it," she said sadly. She walked to the crib and lifted the baby into her arms. Marena stared at Clara. The baby still looked energized, her eyes bright, her little hands twitching as though she wanted the rhythm back. For a second, Marena thought Elena noticed something unusual. But Elena only sighed and kissed her daughter's forehead. "She's calm tonight," Elena said. "It's strange. She usually cries when the weather changes." Marena hesitated, then whispered, "Maybe she felt comfort." Elena didn't understand the deeper meaning behind those words. She nodded, yawning, and left the room with Clara in her arms. When Marena was alone again, she let out the breath she had been holding. She retrieved the stone from under the blanket, clutching it tightly. Tonight was only the beginning. But she knew the next steps would be more dangerous, and more powerful. If she continued, Clara's life could change. And so could everything else. The next morning, the storm clouds cleared, leaving the mansion glowing under soft sunlight. But inside Marena's chest, the storm had only begun. She had seen Clara respond in a way that no doctor had ever been able to make her respond. She had felt the connection, the spark, the silent line of communication that ran between them like an invisible thread. And now, more than ever, she knew she couldn't ignore it. But she also knew she couldn't act freely. If Richard or Elena saw the stone or the wooden stick, they might panic. Wealthy families often trusted only what was proven, scientific, and modern. Anything old, traditional, or mysterious frightened them. She had to be careful, very careful. As the day passed, Marena observed Clara from a distance. The baby seemed more alert than usual, her eyes following movements with a sharper focus. When sunlight flickered through the window, Clara blinked quickly, almost as if she was trying to understand the rhythm of the light. Elena noticed it too but dismissed it as a good morning mood. But Marena knew it was more than that. The previous night's ritual had touched something inside Clara. Something sleeping, waiting. Later in the afternoon, while Elena went to attend a meeting with a new doctor, Clara was left in the care of one of the younger maids. The girl was sweet but inexperienced and often nervous around the baby. She placed Clara in her stroller and sat across the room reading a magazine, completely unaware of Clara's curious gaze moving around the space. Marena approached quietly. "I can watch her for a while," she offered. The young maid eagerly agreed and hurried away, relieved to be free of the responsibility. When the door closed, silence filled the nursery, but it wasn't empty. It felt almost alive. Marena's fingers tingled, the same feeling she used to get when watching her grandmother beginning a ritual. She knew she didn't have much time, Elena would return soon. But something inside her whispered that this moment mattered. She lifted Clara gently from the stroller and placed her on a thick play mat on the floor. The baby immediately stared at her with those wide, knowing eyes. Marena looked around carefully to ensure they were alone. Then, with a deep breath, she pulled out the wooden stone from her apron pocket, now wrapped in a cloth to keep it hidden. Clara's reaction was immediate. Her fingers curled, her chest rose quickly, and her eyes locked onto the object in Marena's hands. It was as though she sensed not just the stone itself, but the energy inside it. "All right, little one," Marena whispered softly. "Let us try something, just a little." She placed the stone gently on the mat beside Clara. The baby reached out with surprising focus, touching the smooth surface with her tiny hand. The moment her fingers made contact, Clara froze, not in fear but in complete concentration, as if she were listening through her skin. Marena felt warmth in the air, a familiar sensation she hadn't felt since her grandmother was alive. "Good," she whispered. "Very good." Then she picked up the wooden stick, the same one with the tiny holes, and began a slow, steady tapping motion beside the stone. Not directly on it, but near enough that the vibrations traveled through the floor and into the stone itself. Tap, tap, rest, tap tap, rest. Clara's eyes widened again. Her hands moved faster. She touched the stone again, then lifted her fingers into the air as if trying to catch the invisible vibrations. Marena continued. Tap, pause, tap tap tap, long pause, tap. This rhythm was older than Marena's village. It had been passed down for generations. It was used for children who heard the world not through ears, but through the heart, through the body, through their senses. Clara's breathing became steady and deep. A strange calm spread across her face, the kind of calm that comes when something inside a person finally finds what it has been searching for. Marena moved the stone slowly in a circular pattern. Clara followed it with her eyes, not losing focus once. Her entire body seemed connected to the movement. "Beautiful," Marena whispered. Something extraordinary happened next. Clara let out a soft sound, not a cry, not a laugh, but a small, breathy noise. It was almost like a sigh mixed with a hum. It was faint, uneven, and accidental, but it was a sound. Marena froze. Clara had never made that sound before. Her mouth opened again, moving as if she wanted to repeat it. A tiny vibration passed her lips. It was barely there, but Marena heard it in her soul. A tear slid down Marena's cheek. "You're trying," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're really trying." But the beautiful moment ended abruptly. The nursery door swung open. Richard stood there. He had returned home early and came to check on Clara. His sharp eyes immediately noticed Marena kneeling on the floor, Clara in front of her, and something wrapped in cloth on the mat. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice firm and suspicious. The wooden stick slipped slightly from Marena's hand. She quickly covered the stone with her shawl. "I was playing with her," Marena said, trying to stay calm. Richard stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Playing? With what?" Marena's heart pounded. She clutched the shawl tightly around the stone. "Just keeping her calm," she replied gently. Richard didn't look convinced. His gaze moved between Marena's face and the bundle beneath the shawl. For a moment, the room filled with tense silence. Then Clara did something unexpected. She reached toward Marena, her small hand stretching out as far as it could, her eyes full of recognition and longing. It was the strongest gesture she had ever made toward anyone. Richard saw it. His expression softened, just slightly. But the suspicion didn't leave his eyes. "We'll talk later," he said quietly, then picked up Clara and carried her away. Marena remained kneeling on the mat, shaken, clutching the stone beneath her shawl. She had taken a risk. A big one. But she also knew something else with absolute certainty. Clara had made a sound today. A real sound. And nothing, no fear, no secrets, no danger, could stop what was coming next. For the rest of the evening, Marena carried a tight heaviness in her chest. She kept replaying the moment Richard walked into the nursery, the suspicion in his eyes, the way he stared at the cloth hiding the stone, the silence that stretched between them like a thin, dangerous thread. She had not meant to break any rules. She had not meant to create trouble. All she wanted was to help Clara. But the world of wealthy families was strict, and any unexpected behavior from a servant was often misunderstood. After her chores were done, Marena went back to her small room. She locked the door quietly and placed the wooden box on her bed. The stone glowed faintly under the lamp's light, as if it was alive, breathing softly in the shadows. She whispered, "I cannot be careless again, but I cannot stop either." She remembered the tiny sound Clara had made, the soft, uncertain whisper that had escaped her lips for the first time. That sound had awakened something inside Marena, something strong and unstoppable. Clara was not unreachable. Her silence was not a wall, it was a door waiting to be opened. Outside the mansion, night fell softly, bringing calm after the storm. But inside Richard and Elena's room, the atmosphere was tense. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, rocking slowly with Clara in her arms. Richard was pacing back and forth, his hands clenched behind his back. "She was doing something strange," he muttered. "She was tapping. And there was something under that cloth." Elena frowned softly. "Marena has worked with us for years. She wouldn't harm Clara." "That's not the point," he insisted. "I don't want anyone experimenting with her. We're already consulting specialists. We don't need strange methods." "Did Clara look upset?" Elena asked gently. Richard stopped. "No, she looked calm," he admitted. "More than calm, focused." Elena looked down at her daughter. Clara stared at her mother's lips as if studying the shape of every movement. It was something she had been doing more often lately. "I know we're scared," Elena said softly. "But maybe we shouldn't ignore things just because we don't understand them." Richard sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We'll watch her carefully. But if Marena does anything odd again, she may have to leave." Those words hit Marena the next morning without him even saying them directly. Richard's behavior changed. He watched her closely. He lingered around the nursery more often. He asked questions in a tone that made Marena feel like she was walking on thin ice with every step she took. But something else happened too, something Richard didn't expect. Clara began making more small sounds. Not full words, not even clear noises, but soft breaths, tiny hums, short sighs. Every sound was a miracle. Elena noticed immediately. She cried the first time Clara let out a tiny repeated sound as she played with her blanket. Richard convinced himself these were natural developments. But deep inside he wondered. The timing was too close to whatever Marena had been doing. Days passed and the changes continued. Clara reacted to movement before it even fully happened. She turned her head when footsteps created vibrations in the floor. She smiled when light flickered in a rhythmic pattern. She touched walls, furniture, wooden toys, feeling the world through her fingertips. But she responded the most to Marena. Whenever Marena entered the room, Clara's eyes brightened. She reached her arms toward her. She calmed instantly when Marena held her. Even without sound, there was something natural, powerful, and ancient between them. Marena felt it too. Still, she was afraid. She used the stone only when no one was around and only for short moments. She hid the box under a loose floorboard in her room, terrified Richard would find it. Every time she performed even the quietest vibration ritual, she checked the hallway 3 times first. She lived between hope and fear. One afternoon, Elena asked Marena to help feed Clara. It was one of the first signs that Elena still trusted her deeply. While feeding her, Clara suddenly began tapping her small hand on the wooden feeding tray, softly, rhythmically. Tap, pause, tap tap. Marena froze. That was the same rhythm she had used during their earlier sessions. Tears filled her eyes. Clara remembered. Elena noticed the tapping too. She likes the tray's texture, she said with a smile. But Marena knew the truth. Clara wasn't playing. She was communicating. That night, Marena decided she could no longer keep the secret locked inside her chest. She took the wooden box from beneath the floorboard and held it close to her heart. If I hide forever, she whispered, Clara may never reach her full world. But how could she approach the family? How could she explain something so unusual, something that most people would call superstition or nonsense? Wealthy families didn't trust old traditions. They trusted doctors, machines, research papers. They believed in things they could see and measure. Marena sat alone for hours, her mind wrestling with fear and courage. Then, a sound echoed from the hallway. Not thunder, not footsteps. A soft, tiny, faint noise. She opened her door. There, in the dim hallway light, stood Elena holding Clara. The baby was awake, making that same small hum, her mouth slowly forming soft movements. Elena looked overwhelmed, confused, hopeful. She started doing this again, Elena whispered. Marena, tell me the truth. Has something been happening? Something you're not telling us. Marena's breath caught in her throat. This was the moment she had feared, and the moment she had prayed for. She looked into Elena's eyes, trembling. I can explain, she whispered. But what I say might sound strange. Elena took a step closer, clutching Clara gently. Strange doesn't scare me anymore, she said softly. Not when my daughter is finally changing. And for the first time, Marena felt the door of truth begin to open. Marena stood frozen in the hallway as Elena waited, holding Clara gently against her shoulder. It felt as if the entire mansion had gone silent, listening to what Marena would say next. Her heart pounded so loudly she could almost feel it echoing inside her throat. She had hidden her secret for so long, believing it would protect everyone, especially Clara. But now the truth was no longer something she could run from. It was standing right in front of her, wrapped in a small blanket, humming softly like a tiny bird trying to learn its first song. Elena, may I speak in your room? Marena whispered. Elena nodded, her face calm but full of deep curiosity. She followed Marena quietly, and they entered the bedroom. The golden lamp cast a warm glow across the room, making everything look softer, like the truth would be easier to understand here. Marena took a breath and began. This gift I use is not something learned from books, she said softly. It is something passed down in my family. A tradition older than me, older than my mother, older than her mother. Elena listened carefully, her eyes never leaving Marena's face. I believe Clara can feel the world, Marena continued, placing a gentle hand on her chest. Just not the way others do. She listens with her skin, with her heart, with her bones. She feels vibrations like messages. Elena's lips parted slightly. You mean, she hears in a different way? Yes, Marena whispered. I tried to help her feel sounds more clearly. She stopped. This was the moment. The frightening moment. She reached slowly into her apron pocket and pulled out the small wooden box. Elena watched silently as Marena opened it, revealing the shimmering stone inside. It glowed faintly, like a piece of moon trapped under glass. Elena inhaled sharply. What is that? It is a stone from my village, Marena said. Used for generations. It carries very light vibrations, not dangerous. Soft, like a heartbeat. Babies in my village who cannot hear sometimes respond to it. Elena looked at the stone, then at Clara, who stared at it with surprising focus. Her tiny hand reached toward it, fingers trembling with curiosity. Does Richard know? Elena asked quietly. No, Marena admitted. He saw me once, but he did not understand. He thought I was doing something strange. I was afraid to explain. Elena sighed, sitting slowly on the bed. She didn't look angry, only overwhelmed. You should have told me, she said softly. But I understand why you didn't. A mother's hope is fragile. And you were scared. Marena bowed her head. If you want me to stop, I will. I never wished to go against your wishes. Elena looked down at Clara again. And then, something unexpected happened. Clara reached out and tapped Elena's arm twice. Tap, tap. The same rhythm Marena used in her sessions. Elena froze. She recognized it. Her eyes filled with tears. She's talking? Trying, Marena replied gently. Communicating in the way she knows. In the way she can. A tear rolled down Elena's cheek as she kissed her daughter's forehead. Why didn't the doctors tell us this? Elena whispered. Because they don't see the world the way Clara does, Marena said softly. She is not broken. She is gifted differently. Elena breathed deeply, absorbing those words. Then she looked up at Marena with a trembling voice. Show me, she said. Show me everything. I want to understand. Marena blinked in surprise. For the first time, someone from the family truly wanted to learn. She placed the stone gently in Elena's hand. Hold it close to her, Marena instructed. Let her feel the vibration. Elena did. Clara's eyes widened. She reached both hands toward the stone, touching it delicately. A vibration ran through her small fingers, and a tiny hum escaped her lips, a hum of familiarity. Elena gasped. Her hand shook. She reacted. Yes, Marena whispered, tears filling her own eyes. She knows it. They continued for several minutes. Clara followed every movement of the stone as if it was speaking to her. And in a way it was. When they finished, Elena handed the stone back with extreme care, like it was a treasured relic. Marena, she said quietly, I trust you. I don't fully understand everything yet, but I trust what I see. And I see Clara changing. Marena pressed a hand to her heart, overwhelmed. Thank you, ma'am. I only want her to grow, to feel her world. But Elena's expression changed suddenly. A shadow crossed her face, fear, confusion, and doubt all mixing together. What about Richard? She whispered. He won't accept this easily. He already suspects something. Marena felt her stomach drop. She knew Elena was right. Richard was protective, strict, skeptical. A man who believed only in logic and science. He would never accept an old tradition. He would see it as dangerous. He might even believe Clara was being manipulated. We must tell him, Elena said. But gently, carefully. At the right moment. Marena nodded, though her hands were shaking. I am ready to face him. For Clara. I will not hide any more. But neither of them knew that at that very moment, Richard stood outside the door, listening. Every word spilling into his ears like a striking truth he was not prepared to face. Richard stood in the hallway, hidden behind the half-closed door, his heart beating fast as he listened to Marina's voice explaining everything he was never meant to hear. His jaw tightened and his chest felt heavy. The words felt unreal to him, vibrations, traditions, stones that carried soft energy. He didn't believe in any of it. But he believed in one thing. His daughter was changing. And that terrified him even more. When Elena opened the door, she gasped softly. There stood Richard, tall, stiff, and unreadable. Marina's breath caught in her throat. She felt the warmth drain from her chest as fear rushed in like a cold wind. How long were you standing there? Elena whispered. Long enough, Richard replied quietly. He stepped into the room slowly, his eyes shifting between Elena, Clara, and Marena. The wooden box in Marina's hand seemed to glow faintly, almost challenging him. For a few seconds no one spoke. The silence was sharp and painful, hanging like an invisible weight in the air. Richard, Elena began gently, I can explain? No, he said, raising a hand. I want her to explain. He looked directly at Marena. Marina's hands trembled, but she did not hide the box. She stood straight, even though fear pressed against her ribs. Sir, she whispered, I am sorry for hiding the truth. I meant no harm. I only wanted to help Clara feel the world in her own way. Richard stared at her with a storm of emotions in his eyes. Anger, confusion, doubt, and beneath all of it, fear. A deep fear only a father could feel. You think a stone can fix her? He said quietly. No, Marena replied softly. Nothing is broken. She does not need fixing. She needs understanding. Those words stunned him. No doctor had ever said that. No specialist had ever dared to say such a simple, powerful sentence. Elena stepped beside Marena. "Richard," she whispered, "I saw it with my own eyes." Clara reacted to it. She followed it. She hummed. Richard swallowed hard. Humming is not hearing. But it is something, Elena insisted. Something she never did before. Marena stepped forward slowly, bravery rising in her like a flame. She opened the wooden box and held it out toward Richard. "Touch it," she whispered. Richard hesitated. His pride almost stopped him. But the love for his daughter pushed him forward. He reached out and touched the stone with 2 fingers. It vibrated. A gentle, steady pulse. Softer than a heartbeat. Warmer than metal. It surprised him. He expected it to be cold and lifeless. "This is what Clara feels," Marena said. "Not sound. Not melody. Vibration. Energy. Life." Elena placed Clara on the bed. The little girl turned her head toward the stone immediately, her eyes bright and alert. She stretched her tiny hand toward it. Then something happened that silenced the entire room. Clara made a new sound. A breathy, soft "ah," as if she was trying to imitate the vibration she felt. Richard froze. He had waited years to hear his daughter make a conscious sound. His eyes filled, but he quickly blinked the tears away, trying to look strong. Elena gasped and covered her mouth. Marena pressed a hand against her chest, holding back tears of her own. Clara tapped the blanket twice. Tap, tap. Marina's rhythm. Richard looked at the taps, then at the stone, then at Marena. The truth became too clear to deny. "She remembers," he whispered. "She responds." "Yes," Marena said. "She wants to speak. But she will speak in her own way. At her own pace." Richard sank onto the edge of the bed, emotions breaking through his armor. Clara reached out and touched his hand. He squeezed her tiny fingers gently, a tear finally escaping down his cheek. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked Elena softly. "Because you weren't ready to listen," she whispered. He swallowed hard. She was right. Richard turned to Marena. "And you, why didn't you come to me?" "Because people fear what they don't understand," she said softly. "I didn't want to lose my place here before helping Clara. I didn't want to lose her trust." Richard stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. A small, slow nod of understanding. Acceptance. Gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. The words were quiet but powerful. Marena closed her eyes as relief washed over her like warm rain. She bowed her head slightly. "I will continue only if you allow me." Richard glanced at Clara, his miracle, his heart, then back at Marena. "Help her," he said softly. "Help us understand her world." A peace filled the room, delicate and beautiful. Elena stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on Marina's arm. "You are not just a housemaid," she said with emotion in her voice. "You are part of this family now." Marina's eyes widened. The words hit her deeper than any praise she had ever received. Clara hummed again, softly, as if blessing the moment. The mansion, once filled with silence and fear, now held something new, hope. And from that day forward, the family worked together. Science, tradition, love, and courage, to help Clara discover her own voice. A voice not born from sound, but from strength, rhythm, and feeling. And sometimes, that kind of voice is the loudest of all.